Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you to everyone for being here. Good morning.
Yes. Good morning.
I'm Congressman Greg Casar. I'm proud to represent the heart of Texas and to help us host this press conference and resolution introduction today. Despite all the noise, Americans want and deserve an effective, humane, and orderly system for welcoming immigrants to this country. Americans deserve the truth, and Americans want solutions instead of lies and rhetoric. And that is why we're introducing this resolution today, to build a system where we have stable migration by calling for comprehensive legislation to address the root causes of forced migration and displacement in this country, while also affirming the need for a true roadmap to citizenship for immigrants here in the United States. Right now, we're getting so much of the opposite. Right now, in this building behind me, Republicans fearmonger and lie about immigrants to distract from their own failures to deliver for the American people. Right now, in this building and on the campaign trail, Republicans have made it their number one job to tell Americans that the reason they feel screwed over is because of immigrants, because they want to lie and not tell the truth, that Americans, in fact, are getting screwed over by Wall Street and by big corporations and by their Republican puppets in this building. And the only way to break through those lies is to tell American people the truth, to own up to the truth of the broken immigration system that we have a job to fix, and to own up to the U.S. policies that contribute to the forced displacement and forced migration of people out of their homes. We can welcome people here that want to come, and we can own up to our failures in the past and in the present that are pushing folks out of their homes. That's what the American people want. They want the truth, and they deserve a plan. We shouldn't be making it harder for people who are desperate to immigrate to this country. We should not be creating more restrictions to asylum seeking at the border. In fact, we should be welcoming those people into our community. It makes us stronger while making sure that we don't create more need for people to seek asylum. We don't need further restrictions that fuel more irregular migration. Republican tactics to curb legal migration, in fact, only benefit the cartels and benefit their own political campaigns. And we also need to acknowledge here in Washington, D.C., what the American people already know. Immigration doesn't begin at the border. It begins in people's home countries. So instead of Trump-light talking points, people deserve a plan and the truth. And the truth is, immigration is good. Most of us standing here are immigrants ourselves or the children of immigrants. Immigrants are part of our families and communities and workplaces. We want to make sure immigrants can come here in an orderly and humane way. We can expand legal pathways for migration, create additional pathways for folks to come here legally, lift the current 180-day waiting period for individuals to work who apply for asylum, guarantee people legal representation in their asylum cases, and utilize community-based alternatives to detention. We can do all of that while also recognizing the American people want a stable immigration system and don't want our country needlessly forcing people out of their homes. The United States does not have a great history of promoting stability across the world, especially in Africa and West Asia and Latin America. Just Latin America, for example, we need to remember that we've intervened militarily at least 5 times in Nicaragua, at least 3 times in Mexico, not to count the times that we have gone in and invaded Cuba and Honduras or overthrown democratically elected governments in Guatemala, Chile, Haiti, and more. We should turn the page on that history and instead pursue U.S. policies that lead to stability and allow people who want to stay in their home countries to stay. We should be asking ourselves, why are people leaving their homes, not just what do we do when they get here? So before blaming immigrants for fleeing desperation, let's take a look at some of our own policies. Today, in Venezuela, our broad-based sanctions have reportedly contributed to an economic depression in the country, leading to more than 7 million people leaving Venezuela since 2012. Everyone here is a supporter of democracy. Everyone here is a supporter of free and fair elections. But we should not be collectively punishing working people and the working poor, leading to millions of people having to flee their homes. The U.S. embargo on Cuba has failed, and the decision to place Cuba on the state sponsors of terrorism list has contributed to the largest migratory flow out of the country in the history of Cuba. Our global economic policies have trapped developing countries in a constant cycle of debt and poverty. And U.S. weapons are fueling violence all across the world, but especially in Latin America and the Caribbean. 90% of firearms recovered from crime scenes in Haiti come from the United States. 70% of those traced firearms from criminal activity in Mexico come from the United States. 75% of firearms recovered from the Dominican Republic originated in the United States. A majority of those U.S. guns recovered from cartels in Mexico come from my home state of Texas. And so if you want to talk about having a more stable immigration system, if you want to talk about reducing violence in Mexico, if you want to talk about taking on the cartels, then we should stop giving out weapons of war without a background check easily to people from Texas to bring to Latin America. There is work we can do. We can modify U.S. policies and work with countries across the world to reduce forced migration and create a more stable immigration system. We can tackle the climate crisis and create good green union jobs across the world. We can remove broad-based sectoral sanctions and economic sanctions that increase poverty. It wouldn't cost us a penny to reduce poverty drastically throughout the developing world. We can stop providing security assistance to governments that are using our weapons to abuse human rights. And we can establish a humane, orderly, effective, and stable immigration system to welcome people legally into our country. So again, before we fall into the trap, this Republican trap of blaming immigrants for all of our problems, instead of those people who are actually exploiting and oppressing the American people, let's tell people the truth. Immigration is good. We can create a good immigration system in this country, and we can slow some of those big spikes in mass migration by looking at ourselves first. And so thank you all so very, very much, and we're proud to introduce this resolution today.
Woo-hoo. Good job.
And next, I'd like to call up my friend, the chair of the Progressive Caucus, the ranking member on our Immigration Subcommittee, U.S. Representative Pramila Jayapal.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Representative Casar, for your incredible leadership, both in the Congressional Progressive Caucus and on this issue. I think this resolution is just an example of how you look at things always with the bigger picture in mind, and I'm grateful for that leadership in Congress. Also want to thank Representative Kamlager-Dove for her leadership on the Foreign Affairs Committee and on this issue. My name is Pramila Jayapal. I represent Washington's 7th Congressional District. I also want to thank Denise Delgado-Vasquez, Gerlene Joseph, Bella D'Alacio for standing with us and working to lift up this resolution. Look, I've worked on the issue of immigration reform for more than a decade before I came to Congress. I am an immigrant myself, as Greg mentioned, with so many of us that are standing here. And I've worked all over the world for 10 years in refugee camps, in Southeast Asia, across sub-Saharan Africa, before coming to Congress. That was all before I came to Congress. And what I know is that this sign is absolutely right. Migration begins way before the border. We have an immigration system, first of all, that is so outdated, that is 30 years old, that has never been adjusted to actually reflect global migration around the world or to reflect the needs of our country, our communities, our economy. When you have caps for immigration that are set 30 years ago, that simply don't reflect what families here in our country need, what our workforce needs, what the opportunities are for our country to make ourselves better with the work and the dedication of immigrants across the country. You have a system that is not orderly. That's where we are today. Everyone knows the system is broken. And by the way, Democrats are the ones that have the solutions to fix it. Republicans just want to keep this out there as an issue so that they can demonize all groups of immigrants. And what we have seen happening in this country with the dehumanization of immigrants by Republican extremists, what we have seen in Springfield, and I know we're going to have our great leader talk about that, but what we have seen happen to the Haitian community, what has been happening to communities, immigrant communities across the country, is trying to dehumanize immigrants so that we will take harsher and harsher attitudes to all immigrants, immigrants who are here legally, immigrants who are undocumented because of our broken system, and immigrants who are just seeking to escape violence, persecution, war around the world. And so that is a top priority. But what I think this resolution does so clearly is it recognizes that migration does start long before the border, that migration is a worldwide phenomenon, and the United States, as powerful a country as we are, with our financial assistance, with our control of many international development organizations, we have the ability to invest our time and our resources into making sure that countries succeed financially, that they are in a stable economic footing, and that we don't contribute to war and devastation in places around the world. And so I am so grateful that we actually are addressing the fact that migration is a global phenomenon and that there is an inverse relationship between the legal pathways that we offer people, the work that we do to stabilize countries, and the people who are actually coming to our borders. We will always need immigrants. Immigrants are crucial to our country, to our economy, and we should treat them with the respect that they deserve. And we should update our legal immigration system so that it offers those many pathways for people to work, to be with families, to contribute, as Haitian immigrants have been doing this entire time in Springfield, Ohio. And we need to look at our actions as a country. How can we let a country like Cuba be a failed state just 90 miles south of our border because we insist on putting Cuba on the state sponsor of terrorism list? Having been to Cuba just recently, I know that the work that we can do as the United States to make sure that we are stabilizing countries around the world will help not only those countries, but will help make sure that only the people who want to really come to America are the ones who are coming to America, and that we have an orderly process. I think that there's a sense in America that people just want to come to America and stay, and there certainly are. I was one of those people. I came at 16 years old with nothing in my pockets because my parents believed that this was the place that I could have the most opportunity, and I've never lived on the same continent as my parents since then. That is certainly a reality of the great country that we call America. People want to come here. There's opportunity. We need people to come here, and they are able to improve their lives and look for something better. There is also the truth that many people who come to this country are coming out of desperation, and they're looking to go home as soon as they possibly can, but they want to go home to a stable country, to a country where they know their kids are not going to be killed, where they know their families can survive, where they know they can put a roof over their head and food on the table. And I think our role as Americans is to make sure that we continue to welcome immigrants in, that we have an orderly system that allows people to come to this country, and that we invest our resources in making sure that we are looking at the crises around the world of violence, of poverty, of persecution, of climate change, of so many other things. This resolution lays out all of those things. It lays out how we can make the immigration system more humane, more orderly, more effective, and it recognizes the contributions that immigrants make to this country, but also the moral duty that we have to protect people who come here fleeing horrible, horrible conditions. And it addresses the root causes that make people flee their homes. We know we can do better, and we must do better for immigrants. And I'm so proud to stand here with this incredible community of lawmakers and of advocates to make sure that we use our power and our platforms here in Congress to fight back against the lies and the stereotypes, and also to make our system more fair and to invest in the places around the world so that we can help lift people up. With that, let me turn it. Should I turn back to you, or do you want me to? Okay, well, let me introduce our next speaker, Denise Delgado Vasquez, a migration expert and scholar on Cuban migration.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for paying attention to this very present, important issue of reforming U.S. immigration policy. I want to address the urgent need to shift the U.S. migration policy, focusing on both stability and supporting migrants in their very different needs. We have here in the United States about 11 million undocumented migrants, and we are both of us, undocumented and documented migrants, we are workers, we contribute to the U.S. economy, and we are an integral part of the U.S. society. In fact, there is a recent report from the Brookings Institution that have just said that deporting migrant workers, undocumented workers from the United States to their origin of countries would undermine the employment growth that we have been seeing in the last and most recent years. And yet, there are a lot of migrants that are still trapped in a limbo without a clear pathway to citizenship or residency. So in parallel of that, there are a lot of border and insecurity issues, humanitarian issues that we still need to address. As we speak, there are families, complete families, vulnerable people, and even solo minors who are crossing the Darien Gap. And this is very pressing issue. This is a humanitarian issue. And there are still people asking, why? Very naive, why they are using these very risky pathways? They wouldn't have other options to stay in their country. Well, they are escaping from very dire situations in their home countries. They are escaping poverty, repression, violence. So they want to come to the United States, a land where they can find different opportunities, and many of them, they want to come back as well. Additionally to that, we have asylum seekers still facing long waits due to the bureaucratic delays, and other programs like TPS and DACA that provide temporary relief, but they are not lasting solutions for migrants. Therefore, it is clear that we need a comprehensive and humane immigration reform that allows the realities to recognize and acknowledge the realities of the United States society, our borders, the labor market as well, and the life of those who are caught in this limbo. And to guide us forward, I want to make an emphasis in 3 key points. First, we need to advocate for the expansion of legal pathways for migrants to come to the United States. As we know and we have said, TPS is a good option, but it's temporal. And an alternative could be expanding employment-based visas, such as H1, H2, visas that support circular migration as well, because as we know, some migrants don't want just to stay in the United States and be separated from their families, but they want to come back and reunite with their family. So supporting circular migration as well as supporting the family reunification that has been highly claimed for many migrants and their families, as well as providing secure, orderly pathways for people in general and a pathway for citizenship for those who has been under DACA or the DREAM Act. The second point I want to mention is that we not only need to have clearly orderly pathways for migrants to come, but also for migrants to stay. The humanitarian parole has been a good option to decrease the irregular migration to the United States. Still, there are a lot of questions that I listen every day from migrants under the humanitarian parole. First, what will happen after the 2-year humanitarian parole period ends? Are we going to be deported? Are we going to have an extension? Are we be able to apply for other permits such as TPS? Specifically for the Cubans, which is the community I belong to, Cuban Americans, Cubans have the option to adjust their status after 1 year and 1 day through the Cuban Adjustment Act, which is something that applies also to those under the humanitarian parole. Then the question is, would that be a possible extension for other migrant communities, maybe under the parole, Venezuelans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, to support and alleviate the risk of becoming undocumented migrants after coming legally to the United States? Even the humanitarian parole process could be improved. I talk every day with Cuban migrants, some who are under the humanitarian parole, and they mention that coming from a different country with other technological and work culture, they face challenges on understanding the new technology in the United States or how to get an employment after months of trying to get a job. So one of the potential things that we can do for the parole program is provide more guidance on these aspects. And the third and last point I want to bring is the U.S. embargo and economic sanctions to Cuba. It has fueled the current migratory wave. In the last 5 years, there is about 1 million Cubans who have migrated from Cuba. The population on the island is just about 10 million, so this is a huge part of the Cuban community in just 5 years. And of course, there are a lot of factors that influence on the crisis in Cuba, from internal issues, economic and political ones as well, but the U.S. embargo, the sanctions, have been influencing and fueling this current migration wave. It has added burdens for families facing food shortages, medicine shortages, and even right now there are people without access to electricity. So all those problems have been fueled by the U.S. Restrictions and sanctions towards Cuba. But we are talking today because time is ticking, and we really need a comprehensive policy, immigration policy, that works for countries and for people, not against them. So we need all to be working together and not in isolation. We need to work with the country, with the grassroots organizations, and why not also with international institutions such as IMF, World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, because they help to foster development and enhance stability in the countries of origin. As we have said here, migration does not start at the border. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Congresswoman Jayapal. And next, I want to call up one of my fellow co-chairs of the Global Migration Caucus, the Congresswoman from Los Angeles, Sydney Kamlager-Dove.
Thank you, Greg. I am so honored to be a co-founder of this caucus with you and Delia Ramirez from Illinois to talk about such an incredibly important issue. My name is Sydney Kamlager-Dove, and I represent the 37th Congressional District in California. My district is over 50% Latino, over 20% African American, and over 30% immigrant. While we are here today to mark the introduction of our Migration Stability Resolution, I have a responsibility to my constituents to call out the harmful, violent lies surrounding immigration that has led us here today. Trump and his lapdog J.D. Vance have encouraged Republicans to say all of the quiet out loud. Let's recap. A few weeks ago, J.D. Vance propagated a racist and dangerous lie about Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, endangering migrants and wreaking havoc on a community in his own state. He admitted subsequently that he had no proof that these were rumors and that he didn't care. Just yesterday, a Louisiana Republican tweeted what has to be the most vile and racist thing I have seen as a member of Congress in a very long time. And that is saying something. Coming from this Republican majority that has propagated blatant racist and xenophobic attacks on just about everyone, creating a sick new normal. This Louisiana Republican said Haitian migrants better get their asses out of America before January 20th. Well, I would love to hear his plan to address the gang violence, political unrest, and economic collapse that is bringing Haitians here in the first place. But we all know Republicans have no plan to help Haiti or its people. So let me simplify the question. What is your plan to tackle the underlying forces that are driving migration to the United States? And we don't want concepts, we want plans. And we want more than plans, we want action. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle have never had a plan, only hateful rhetoric about mass deportation. So if Republicans want to point fingers about immigration, then they need to start pointing them at themselves and their caucus. It is time to stop demonizing, it is time to stop fear-mongering, and it is time to get to work. That is why we are here today. With migration on the rise worldwide and conflict, food insecurity, climate change, and political violence driving immigration to the United States, it is imperative that we reshape our immigration policy to address these global crises. We must ensure that our current U.S. policy is not contributing to poverty and instability in the developing world. We must also promote a humane and sustainable immigration system at home. And we must develop a true pathway to citizenship for those fleeing poverty, hunger, and violence. And I can tell you that we know how to do it. It is being done already in a very small way. On a bipartisan level, with Republican and Democratic support, we have funded a Ukrainian settlement program that has supported tens of thousands of Ukrainians fleeing the violence that is happening over there, here to the United States. And they have had support, seeking employment, seeking housing, getting integrated with our social services, and getting support from their community. They also don't look like the majority of the folks that are standing with me, with us, and this Global Migration Caucus. So we know it can be done. It is being done right now. But what is not happening is those kinds of programs and support systems and resources are not being availed to those who are coming here from all parts of the globe, especially from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And so this resolution is calling on Congress to open our lens and widen our aperture. It recognizes immigration is useful. It is an economic driver, a cultural stimulant, and a workforce generator. So to my Republican colleagues, please stop taking marching orders from a man who thinks that asylum seekers come from mental institutions, and start working with Democrats to address the root causes of migration and provide those coming here with an equitable and welcoming immigration process. It is what migrants deserve. It is what this country deserves. It is what we are all asking for, because we are all part of the same global community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Congresswoman. And next we will hear from García Joseph, who is co-founder and the executive director at the Haitian Bridge Alliance.
Thank you. Honneur respect. My name is García Joseph. I am the co-founder and executive director of the Haitian Bridge Alliance, the Black Immigrants Bail Fund, and the Cameroon Advocacy Network. And I stated those specifics because when Haitians goes, we don't fight for just ourselves. We fight for everyone. It is with a heavy heart that I am standing here today, but grateful for Congress members who are standing for what is right, for bringing resolutions to address the root causes of migration, to make sure that we understand how U.S. foreign policies play a key and major role on why people are being forced to flee home. And I'm going to share something quickly from one of our cohort members in Springfield, Ohio. He said, and I quote, "I fled my home due to insecurity because of the fact that the U.S. continues to destabilize my country. I fled and I made it to the U.S., seeking safety, seeking protection. Now, once again, because of people in power that are supposed to provide that protection, we feel that we have to flee again. With the rhetorics we are getting from Mr. Trump and Mr. Vance, and people supporting him like Mr. Elon Musk, and we are having members in Congress saying the most vile, despicable, and attacking the Haitian Bridge Alliance, who dare and will continue to dare to be sophisticated enough to stand against them and bring them into accountability. What is happening is unacceptable. Today they came for the Haitians. Tomorrow they will come for each and every one of us. So together, we are coming to say enough is enough. We will not allow them to continue this fear-mongering narratives that will instill hate and division in this America as we continue to fight to move forward in a better light. So I stand before you on behalf of this community that is strong, resilient, and will continue to push forward. As Congress Casar showed the other day on the floor, and while he was speaking to a board member of Project 2025, who stated that Haiti should have still been enslaved for at least 25 more years. We read between the lines. What he wanted to say was Haiti should have still been enslaved today. Because if Haiti was enslaved today, black people around the world would have still been enslaved today.
That's right.
They cannot accept the fact that Haiti exists. They cannot accept the fact that I exist. And we are going to continue to push and let them know that we will make sure that they will not bring us back to a state of enslavement, a slave of ownership of somebody else. And we will make sure, by God, we will make sure that we make the necessary changes that are needed. With this resolution, which we strongly stand behind, we believe that this is a way forward to changing what needs to happen. In these United States of ours, I see three very distinct subgroups of people to form this perfect union that we strive to be. We see indigenous people of this land that have been murdered, raped, and stolen from. We see those of us who were taken from home, enchained, enslaved, and brought to this country, and this hemisphere beyond our will. And those who fled their home countries for persecution, in search of a new reality, in search of a new life. And those same people are turning those seeking asylum out. Whether you came from the Mayflower or you are at the border, migration is a human right.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
So today, we will continue to push. Unafraid, unbothered, sophisticated, and we will push forward and we will hold them, each and every one of them, accountable. None of them is above the law. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it deserves one more round of applause. And our last speaker, who I've really been, I've admired her work and their work, is Bella Delacio, who's an organizer with Stop U.S. Arms to Mexico.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Isabella Delacio, and I'm the grassroots organizer for Stop U.S. Arms to Mexico. We are a project of global exchange that conducts research, we lobby, and we bring human rights defenders and victims of gun violence, U.S.-sourced armed violence in Mexico, to the United States to advocate for their own lives that have been lost at the hands of U.S. arms. As a second-generation Cuban American, I grew up in a household that believed in the American dream. When I became a senior in high school, a gunman stole 17 lives in Parkland, Florida, marking one of the deadliest mass shootings in our nation's history, just 25 minutes from my high school. This tragedy changed my community in Broward County forever. My former elementary school classmates' lives forever altered in a high school I used to drop my sister off at every day. And in the country where we are supposed to live the American dream, firearms became the leading cause of death for children and teens. The U.S. Surgeon General recently declared gun violence a public health crisis, and we are infecting the world with it. Just across the border, gun violence is also a leading cause of death for children and teens in Mexico, with 70% of firearms recovered in crimes in Mexico being traced back to the United States. When I took to action after the Parkland shooting, I went on a peace tour with Global Exchange. We traveled to the Bronx in New York, to Inglewood, California, to Tijuana, to Morelos. And we traveled to these cities to create a binational human rights agenda rooted in the perspectives of meeting survivors of U.S.-sourced armed violence and people whose sons, daughters, mothers, and fathers have been forcibly disappeared. Over 116,000 people have been forcibly disappeared in Mexico at the hands of U.S.-sourced firearms. And this week marks the 10th anniversary of the disappearance of 43 Ayotzinapa students in Guerrero, and yet 10 years later there are still no answers. While families of the 116,000 disappeared fight for truth and justice, they are often threatened by organized crime and uprooted from their homes to migrate because leaving is a matter of life or death. Firearms flow legally to Mexico through U.S. exports and illegally through straw purchases. Illegally trafficked guns are empowering Mexican transnational criminal organizations with an estimated 250,000 firearms annually from the U.S. This happens through straw purchases from gun stores and gun shows, especially in states with weak gun laws. In other words, a gun purchase in the United States is as likely to be used in a homicide in Mexico as it is in the United States. Mexico only has one gun store, and it is on an army base. The Army is listed as the sole end user on gun export licenses, but the Army then distributes these firearms throughout various police states in Mexico, causing legally exported weapons to arm police and military units with a history of corruption and human rights like in Guerrero. This violence has caused over 2 million migrants to migrate to the U.S. last year, and more than half had experienced persistent and unrelenting gunfire before arriving here. From Parkland to Guerrero, the guns that are killing us are the same. If we want to create solutions to immigration, we have to create solutions to gun violence. Right. While right-wing officials capitalize on fear-mongering about the southern border, they actively arm organized crime by refusing to pass gun violence prevention legislation, and therefore contributing to the crisis at our border. This is why Global Exchange and Stop U.S. Arms to Mexico are proud to endorse the Migration Stability Resolution, which recognizes that immigration policy begins at home. This resolution aims to reduce arms trafficking and the flow of weapons into Mexico and the region by strengthening U.S. gun laws, controlling the scale and end users of U.S. exported firearms, and banning assault rifles. Before we blame families who are seeking asylum because they are threatening for fighting for truth and justice for their loved ones, we must stop fueling the violence. Thank you, Representative Casar, Jayapal, and Kamlager-Dove for your leadership on immigration and your commitment to our communities. This resolution is a humane policy response to immigration and addresses the realities fueling migration and displacement across our borders. Thank you.
The United States Congress will have a choice. Do we want to keep on sending guns into Mexico and Latin America, or do we want to provide stability there? Will leaders continue to lie about Haiti after our own country destabilized Haiti? Or do we want to provide stability and truth? Do we want to continue our policies that contribute to the starvation of people in Cuba and in Venezuela and across the world? Or do we actually want to stand with the working people of those countries as they strive for freedom? And which of those choices leads to a more stable and a more humane immigration system? That's the choice we have before us today. Those are the questions that members of neither party have frankly asked themselves often enough here in Washington, D.C. And I'm so thankful to my co-sponsors on this resolution and to everyone in the community that is putting that question now before the United States Congress. Thank you so much, and we will continue driving this forward. This is the first step of many, and we'll be looking forward to answering your questions. Thank you. I don't know if there's questions from anybody here or if you want us to come one-on-one with you. We can do one-on-one. That sound good? Okay, thank y'all.